G'day, my name's Jay. I'm from World Language, and today in teacher training tip we're going to talk about slips and errors. So errors come in many flavors, many colors, but today we're predominantly interested in two: slips and errors. A slip is when a student makes a mistake, but it's an innocent mistake. Perhaps they forgot, but essentially they're aware that this is a mistake and they can usually self-correct this problem. It's maybe a habit, they know that it's a mistake, but they have the capacity to self-correct this slip. An error is something a little deeper. It's something that the student doesn't really have the knowledge. Perhaps they've been incorrectly taught. For whatever reason, the error is incorrect language and the student doesn't have the capacity to self-correct this. They need to be taught. An error is indeed a mistake. A slip can be thought of as an accidental mistake, if that exists. It's more of an accidental slip of the tongue, if you like. So we have two categories. We have a slip, which is an error that can be self-corrected, usually not so serious, and an error, which is something that a mistake that the student makes that is usually repeated and needs intervention to correct. So that leads us to our third point. Errors that have become uncorrected and left to become a part of the student's language, we refer to as fossilised errors. These fossilised errors can be a little bit more difficult to remove from a student's grammar or language. So in order to address fossilised errors, personally, I use a technique called anchoring. I would love to say that this has a foundation in neuro-linguistic methodology, but the fact is it doesn't. We all do it. We do it naturally. I think it's as old as teaching is, and it's a very useful technique. Anchoring is when we use a signal in order to mark a time when a student is making an error. So if you're doing a fluency technique, conversation or something like that, you don't want to interrupt the student and have them lose their train of thought. Interrupting a student during fluency is generally not considered a good practice. However, in my opinion, for fossilised errors, interrupting the student briefly at the point of the mistake in a fluency activity can be beneficial. The student then learns to identify the error and self-correct very quickly during fluency, which is in real life when they're going to need to correct themselves. So I believe that this technique is effective. It's called anchoring. It works like this. When the student makes a mistake, you initiate a signal. That signal may be, if the student is a visual type of student, it may be something visual. For example, I have a student who always omits the word to after a movement verb that's related to destination. For example, I'm driving to Campinas. They would say, I'm driving Campinas. Omitting this to, I would immediately say, and I would use my hand to signal to. You need to use to. The student then equates this with, oh, I forgot to put to after my movement verb. And very quickly they put in to and correct their sentence. The next time this happens, I do the same thing. To. I'm driving to Campinas. After some time, this trigger or anchor becomes a part of the student's learning process. Then during a fluency technique, I simply need to just go like this, and the student will equate that with, oh, I forgot to put to after my movement verb, and they will self-correct themselves and continue on with their fluency activity. So this technique, it's reminiscent of Pavlov's technique, which we won't go into here. But this is just one technique for correcting. There are a plethora of techniques for error correction, much more than we can go into in this video. But today we touched on slips, errors, and fossilized errors, and using anchoring to correct errors in students. Hope you enjoyed the mini lesson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.